This tutorial will be a detailed step-by-step guide to help you draw holographic-like anime eyes. I am Shy Fox, and I am drawing in Clip Studio Paint, but you can use any art program. To get started, we are going to be drawing the eyes from the base of a head. So I've gone ahead and sketched this head shape in an anime, but also somewhat realistic looking head shape for you here. And you can download this image of this head base for you to use. Just go to the description and it's there for you to download. Look for future tutorials on my channel as to how to actually draw this for your anime artworks and whatever you're drawing. But for today, we are just focusing on eyes, so don't worry too much about that. You're welcome to use this base. The first thing we're really thinking about doing is eye placement, and we're going to sketch those eyes, or at least the sort of upper eyelid in. I'm going to pick a dark blue to get started, and any sketching tool will do. I've just got, I'll just use a basic pencil for us right now. I'm just going to tone down the opacity of my sketch layer just so I can see it a little bit, but not too much. And I have a new layer, and I'm going to zoom in a bit so I can be closer to where the eyes are going to be. And we want the top of the, I guess, lash line to touch that line here, which is actually the line for the top of the eyes, or where the eyebrows should approximately end up. So you can follow along and sort of sketch what I'm sketching. So we have the upper part, and then I'm just kind of creating a section that I'm going to fill in. So I'm making it pretty thick, and it goes from being kind of narrow at this end, a couple of just like strokey lines, imperfect. It's going to have kind of a sketchy style feel, even though it's not going to look like a sketch in the end. Just how we're creating this is kind of sketchy. I'm going to have a little eyelash come out that way, and then another one here, and just connect that. And then from here, we can do a little line coming down on either side, sort of rounding in, and it's going to kind of follow this line there. Now we're not going to draw this line. This is kind of an imaginary section of the eye that we'll kind of create through choosing colors after, but we can kind of sketch this in. And the other thing we might want to do is add little lashes here and there, kind of strategically placed. Place some here, even one kind of angling this way on this side of the eyelash is also fine. And for fun, I'm going to even have one coming down like that. So I'm just going to fill this in, fill it in. I am almost done filling this in, and I'm still using my pencil tool. You can change your brush if you want, but I don't feel that is necessary. You can do whatever you want though. So I'm not trying to make it look like a perfectly blocked in or perfectly edged type of shape. It's supposed to be a little bit light and wispy and sketchy, because eyelashes can be a bit feathery, and I think that works for this. All right, now one of the things that people struggle with a lot is, how do you then draw the other eye? I mean, we haven't drawn the whole eye, but at this point we are going to put the lashes in for the other eye. I'm going to use a little trick. I'm going to go layer, duplicate layer, and I'm going to transform it, flip it in a mirror style. And then because these there's an angle to this, it's not perfectly straight on portrait, we do have to do some fixing. Your other option, of course, is to draw it in, but this is hopefully going to save us some time. So I'm going to do a kind of distort, or you could do like a free transform. Let's try distort. And I'm just going to kind of, actually not distort, let's do free transform. Usually it lets me do what I want more easily. So anyway, I'm going to pull it in more narrow. And I am going to also pull this in a touch, and it's going to hopefully give us that feeling of that eye on the far side of the face. And I'm going to click OK. And at this point, I'm thinking this is the right time to kind of adjust sizing and placement of these eyes. I don't know about you, but when I draw my eyes, I tend to have to move them around after I've sketched them in. I certainly don't place them perfectly in place. The first time I draw them, I tend to draw them too big. So let's make that smaller and place it there. You can have it sitting a little bit overlapping with your pink line if you like. And I gotta do the same thing to the other one. Let's make sure they look similar size. The one on the far side could appear a bit smaller as it is farther on the far side of the face. Now we do need to rotate this, so I'm gonna rotate it to about there so it feels even on the face. I've got my little eyelashes touching the side of the face here and just a bit of a gap here. So using the sketch that image file I have for you to help us place these eyes in this sort of section that you can see here. So now would be a good time to go in and touch up anything about these eyelashes at this point if you would like, and we're going to move on. So I'm actually going to merge these two together. I'm happy with them. You don't have to, but I'm going to. Now I'm going to pick an even smaller brush size, and I'm just going to kind of zoom in a bit so I can really see what I'm doing. And I'm going to draw the iris in. It's just going to be a really just a line here to kind of place where I want that to be. And you know what, I'm gonna move it around and even transform it to make it exactly what I want. Why not? We are in fact digital artists. Let's use our digital tools so we don't have to draw the same shape 1,000 times. So I'm just trying to decide how I want this to go. And I've decided approximately there. We want some white space of the eye on this side and some white space here. We can imagine a line coming down here and connecting this. Again, we're not going to draw that in or anything, but we can imagine it. And what we also can draw, I'm going to go back to the line, the layer with the lashes, and I'm going to draw in little lashes as I would imagine them being. Maybe even a slight line along the bottom here, just really slight. There's so many different ways you could draw the bottom lash line, or the other option is draw nothing. But we're gonna draw something like that with really subtle little lashes like that, and we'll try and make the other side match. So let's go do the same thing. I'm gonna switch layers to the one with the little circle. Draw a circle on this side and maybe move it around. Since it is on the same layer, I'm gonna have to lasso it and then do my free transform. Now this is really important. The reason we didn't copy paste the eye from one side to the other with the iris drawn is because the iris placement is going to be very different on this far eye. We need to, instead of having it centered, pull it way over because we are kind of making eye contact with our character, so it needs to be way over here, really close to this. Not a whole lot of white is going to be showing on this side, but there's going to be a lot more white on the far side of the eye. I'm just going to fix up the shape of the top here of this iris. I want it to feel curved and round, so a bit more like that. Oh, and the other thing, because of the angle, we didn't fix this yet, eyelashes. We're going to erase this. It actually should be facing the other way. Let's fix our lash line while we still have the chance and just do it that way, sort of centered and there. And now it sort of matches the other lash line. Now let's go ahead and draw the bottom lashes of the far side eye, little line underneath, and just a couple of really soft lashes underneath, really subtle. But you're welcome to put your own spin on it however you like. Now we've drawn the eyes on the head, and the head's at an angle here. I'm just going to try and change the canvas so that I can get a good look at the eye placement. Eye placement's really important. It's something I talk a lot about in my tutorials, and it's never too late to try and fix it. And I'm looking at it right now and thinking it can be fixed. So I'm gonna move our eyes around, just grabbing the layers that I need and even just rotating it so that they feel even on the face. I don't want one eye higher than the other. Don't know if you can tell what I'm doing, but that to me looks far better than it was. And that's the beauty of layers, is you can kind of go back in and make those kinds of tweaks as you go. I'm gonna, as much as I can, draw the eyes sort of upright like this, so that it's easier for anyone to, I think, follow along. So we'll try and keep the canvas like this. Now that we've got our placement sort of there, and I'm happy with it for the moment, I'm just going to go back to our sketch layer and tone it down even more. I like to see it a little bit because it gives me a sense of what I think the big picture of this is going to look like, as it's not going to be just an artwork of just eyes. Going to put this on a character, right? So tone that down, and now we can focus on things like the coloring. So far we just have our original layer of the head base sketch thing, and that one's a red layer here, so I know it's different, not part of what I'm, the eyes. And then I've got the lashes all together, the upper and bottoms all merged together. Keep yours separate if that helps you. And then I've got these iris lines on a separate layer, and I'm planning at the moment that that layer may even get removed, but it's just kind of the guidelines for the coloring that's coming up. All right, new layer, and I want to sketch in the pupils. Let's take a brush, any brush will do, and just little circle in the middle of this eye, sort of positioned a little bit higher is fine. And then just for a second, I'm going to make a new layer and make it easy so I can move this around. But I'm going to do the other eye, not iris, pupil, right about there. So notice the distance from here to there as here to there on that one. And we're also going to keep it positioned about as high as the other one. So about how far down this is as this far down on the other side, so that they feel pretty centered, and of course they don't look right. Separate layers for the moment, move them around, and even flip your canvas and be like, does this look awkward? If it does and you can't figure out why, just move them around. Like, this looks awkward, little wide-eyed there. Let's flip her back, and happy with that. Let's merge these together, put our pupils together. And a little trick is going to be to erase with an airbrush and just kind of fade that out, kind of optional. If you're confused and that's advanced for you, don't worry about it. I just want to create a fun look. And you know what? I'm going to make these pupils black because we are thinking about coloring. So depending on your art program, changing the color of something you've already drawn could vary, but in this case in Clip Studio Paint, I'm going to lock the transparent pixels of the layer this symbol shows up, and that I can color over it. And I think this is a good time to do the same thing for these lashes. Let's lock it and change the color to black. And I like to add colors into my lashes, so I'm going to pick a red and airbrush the tips. Now, because our layer is locked with transparent pixels, we won't end up drawing off the section that we previously had colored like that. So I'm just going to undo, make sure it's locked, and now I can just color specifically on the layer, parts of the layer that we want. So just kind of tips of the eyelashes, in the corners, and we can leave the bulk of the middle black for now. And I'm going to create a new layer and actually clip it on. I'm going to pick out a purpley pinky color, something like that, and pick some kind of brush tool. Just a basic brush will do, something kind of soft with some opacity. Doesn't really matter, you choose. And I'm going to do some strokes back and forth in the center of the eye, sort of in line with the pupil. And then I'm going to do a little line at the bottom on that side, and then little dots here. One dot like that. Kind of see what we have going on, and we're going to kind of mirror that on the other side. This definitely doesn't have to be perfect, just some nice little markings, and I'm actually going to turn down the opacity to make it look less saturated. Take that down, less noticeable. Right about there, why not? Now for this part, if you're coloring and it helps you, you can certainly go ahead and add like a skin colored layer underneath, whatever you want to do. I'm not going to necessarily have that on, but I have created a layer with sort of skin colorish, in this case that we're using, to help guide me if I need it, but I can also just turn it off. And why we might need that too is because we're going to draw the whites of the eyes, and the way the whites of the eyes are best drawn is dependent on the skin color underneath. So I'm going to go ahead and add a layer, and I'm going to make sure it's above the red layer is kind of my base sketch, and this blue layer is the skin, so I don't get confused as they're not truly part of the artwork of the eyes that we're doing. But anyway, so a layer above those two, and you can pick pure white if you like. Let's do that, and a brush to kind of shade in or color in this part. Now, with our artwork, it is definitely best when the eyes aren't like the whitest white. It is usually best if they are just kind of slightly lighter than the skin color chosen. So for the moment, let's just block these in with the whitest white you can come up with. Do that first. And how I'm doing this is it's just kind of guided. The placement of the white is just guided by the shape of the eye. You can take note of how I'm doing mine. It doesn't need to be perfect because it's actually going to show up really subtle. So we can erase parts where it doesn't line up. So that's pretty good. Now what we're going to do is if we make our skin color full to what we think it'll look like, something like that, and your skin color, if we're going to just make it complicated, skin color can also depend on the environment of the image, but let's not think too hard about color theory and just say that that's our, our skin color. And the eyes, we can then tone down opacity and have something kind of like that. And so the whites of the eyes are usually, they're not white, they're just like potentially, depending on lighting, a lighter version of the skin color. So that maybe is the simpler way to go thinking about it, is your choice of whites of the eyes is just going to be a lighter version of the skin, and that just has to do with bouncing light, color theory stuff. Otherwise, if you want to keep simple, just use whatever white you would like. Now I am going to soften the edges of this, so I'm going to take the airbrush tool and switch it to erase mode, which is just down bottom left on mine at least. Setup is you can pick your colors, and I'm just coloring with some transparency to kind of do an eraser effect. I suppose you could find an eraser that has a feathery edge to do the same thing. So I'm just kind of erasing there. And this is going to make it feel nice and blended, but you're welcome to leave those edges harder as well, because that certainly is a style. But in this case, I am making it soft along here, leaving the hard edge where the bottom lash line is, and slightly erasing. It doesn't need to be fully, erased. I like being able to see a little bit of this hard edge. It's still there a bit, but definitely more faded. So it kind of brings a little bit more of something real, a nice mix, maybe some semi-realism into our semi-realistic anime or something. And now for the fun part. Let's actually start coloring some of the iris of the eye. Let's find that layer that kind of lined the iris, and just underneath it, I'm going to make a new layer and pick a color to start coloring it. Okay, I've picked out a soft pinky, light pinky, slightly maybe purple color. I see that my layers are not in order. Of course, things on top are going to appear on top, so I actually need to move my eyelash layer and the layer clip to it up. Don't mind me while I do those things. We have our pupil, And so we've got the layer with the color. So we're just going to solidly color this in. You can do both. All right, with that colored in on both sides, it's up to you whether you want to actually keep this layer or not, or whatever you want to do with it at this point. I'm just going to color it and maybe merge it with the other. It doesn't really matter. But I guess at the end, we just want to make sure those irises look pretty round. So I got to fix mine, make them look a little rounder. On second thought, I'm literally going to leave the sketch line in there. It's a bit out of laziness, but there is absolutely nothing wrong with leaving that kind of line. So I have made that decision. Next, let's, on top of this layer with the colors, on this layer, let's lock the pixels and grab a light blue, a whitish blue. I'm just going to airbrush the tops of the eye. This is the fun part where we can get a little creative. I'm going to color pick the skin color of the whites of the eye. I guess, yeah, that's the color we're picking. And I'm just going to do that at the bottom. There, it's kind of like it fades out a bit. And I'm going to do that to my line layer because I want it to feel the same. So there we go. On our layer with the iris colors, new layer, clip onto it. And we're going to grab a blue like this. And we are going to kind of follow the sides of the eye like this and like that. Use whatever brush you want. It can have some softness to it. You decide. So our color, this dark blue color, is going to go sort of around the edges, not at the bottom of the iris, but along the top in this sort of shape. And then it's going to follow the pupil in a bit of kind of a W shape. Like that. Just going to clean it up, make it look a little nicer. So it should leave sort of a bubble at the top. And let's do the other side. And the pupil's a little bit further over, so the W isn't exactly in line with it, but something like that. I'm just going to preserve the pixels of this layer and just airbrush a slightly lighter blue along the bottoms. It's really subtle. You'll hardly even notice the difference, but I did do that there. Next step is going to be add a layer, clip it on, and inside the bubble areas, we're going to play with some abstract shapes to make an interesting shadow. So kind of using our same blue color on this new layer, we are going to use, there's a couple different ways you could do this, but I'm just going to use the lasso tool and just kind of draw in and around a bit of an irregular shape like that, kind of inside. And then I'm going to airbrush it inside. Now that's one of the ways you could do this kind of effect. Creates a very interesting shadow. When you kind of step back and all the other pieces of it are there, it looks really cool. But if the lasso thing is too hard, I would actually kind of just shade this in lightly. Here, let's shade it all in and then tone down the opacity, and then we can use like an eraser to do the opposite. So we do want it to be the same shape as what the other side is. We're kind of having it follow this lash there and then down, kind of following the same shape that we got going on. The one thing we're just going to have to make sure in the end is that they have about the same opacity to them. So rather imperfect is completely fine. And yeah, as we can look at this, one is a lot lighter than the other. So let's try and play with that. I'm going to have to soften this side. Now is a really good time to add in the white highlights of the eyes. So let's create a new layer above those ones and get a brush with some decent opacity to it. And we're going to add some small ones. There's going to be several, but they're going to be small. So let's do one here. It's okay if it overlaps some of the design of what's underneath. One next to it there. We can even do one where the pupil is. So to do that, we might need to move this layer to the very top. I'm just going to make it our topmost layer. Put one right on the corner of the pupil there, because why not? These can almost be placed anywhere, but there is some logic to it. So one here. These are going to be harder to see at the bottom, but do them like that. And one here. So I'll zoom in. You can really see where I've placed all of those. We got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 of those. And let's make sure we do them on the other side. We don't want mirror image of highlights. They should be all facing the same way technically because of the way light hits the eyes. So it's the same, not a mirror image. Oh, and don't forget the pupil one. So is that more than 7? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. No, that's 7. All right. I hope it doesn't annoy you that the bottom of the skin of the face is like wonky. It's rather imperfect because it didn't matter. But if it bothers you, I can just, you know, smooth that out. It was kind of bothering me for a sec. So I don't know. Is that better? I just kind of remembered a small thing that we can do that usually I would do at the same time of doing the whites of the eyes, but it is not too late. Let's head over to the whites of the eyes layer. I'm gonna lock the transparent pixels of it. I'm gonna color pick the color there of the whites of the eyes, and as you can see, it's like a tan color, and I'm gonna pick a darker version of that, some kind of brush, and we're gonna do an arc shadow in there. And if you don't like how the color of that, you can just, you know, change it. So it's a shadow. There we go. It's looking better. I'm gonna have it kind of line up with the bubble, this like bubble section that has some logic to it if we do it that way. And I'm actually going to fade it out a little bit with an airbrush. I'm going to soften that. Oops. To do so, I'm going to color pick this again, and it should fade to lighter. Stylistic choice. You don't have to do that, but you sure can. I have preemptively decided to upgrade the amount of white showing, kind of like it there. That's kind of the beauty of seeing things unfold as you paint them, seeing colors come together as you paint them. You kind of need to adjust because colors next to other colors affect colors. You didn't come for a color theory lecture, did you? All right, no? Okay, I'll stop. Now I can see we're getting a lot of layers in here. If that's confusing you, you might want to hold off merging in the meantime because we're still like putting layers in there. I don't know about you, but I tend to have lots of layers for a bit and then I ultimately do merge them. But that's also where the color coding of layers might come in handy. So like, for example, I'm going to color code the iris purple so then I know that layers being attached to it are located here. So anyway, we have 1, 2 clipped on to the iris layer. I'm going to clip a new one, and this one is, it doesn't really matter, I guess, where it is lined up here. We might change our minds on that. But anyway, it's attached, and we're going to find ourselves a really pale blue, some kind of brush to use. I'm going to change the size and do a little, yep, all right. It has become clear to me. I'm actually going to drag it down below the layer with the dark blue. That's going to work better for us. Okay, so blue kind of around the iris on either side, and then we're going to do little line there, little line there. This is going to feel a little bit abstract, and it is, but the fun in it is you can almost like do whatever you want and it's just gonna work in the end. Okay, I make no guarantees. You're gonna like it, but have fun with it. Trust the process. Let's make some markings. You can copy mine exactly if you want. And there we go. We have some blue markings. Let's grab another color. Let's grab yellow. This might even give a bit of a holographic feel. I guess we'll have to decide how that actually looks when we're done, but I'm doing just the yellow dots there. I'm gonna get a pink go in more of a peachy, I guess it's more peach than what we had before. So then kind of the base color that's underneath. So I'm actually going to make it a bit more pinky than that. Find the right color here. Sure, something like that. Let's grab the blue again and do a couple of markings inside the upper part. Maybe one there. Make sure we're being as roughly symmetrical. It doesn't have to be perfect. That's the fun in this. We don't want to make it painful. Definitely doesn't have to be perfect. Okay, pretty much that. Looks a little strange, maybe when you think about it really hard, but when you step back, it starts to look pretty neat. Flip, get a fresh perspective. There are slight things we can do to kind of change this up to make it look even better. One of the things I'd actually like to do is attach, whoopsie doodle. Let me take off the lock transparency if we're going to do this. I want to change that shape just a slight bit. Improve upon what we've got. And I'm going to actually lock it again, take a light blue and just kind of place it into the middle. Let's create a new layer for the iris. Clip that on. I'm going to color pick this from here, this blue, maybe even slightly lighter than that. Any brush will do. And let's do a design that kind of reminds me of a flower, but it's got to kind of stop towards the bottom and then it just kind of stops. And it's curving around, bump, 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 stop, bump, 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 and stop. Now I'm going to lock the pixels, make sure it blends in with the upper part, color picking here, airbrush, making it blend. And then I'm going to have it fade out to a lighter blue. We do want to make sure these lines feel like they are kind of curving around. So I'm actually going and fixing this. I'm just going to distort it, drag it so it feels like it's going around the pupil, sort of in line, something like that. Now I just turned off the skin layer to sort of step back and like see how we're progressing with this. Zoom out, how's it looking? And flip. Do we like it? Do we need to move the eye placement around? Maybe. If you're like me and you have all of them on different layers and you just kind of want to adjust them, you can kind of select all your layers and then, you know, move around the eye that you want to move around. And because I flipped it, I kind of see some differences and I might want to make some of those changes right now. And you can kind of see that despite my original base drawing, I've kind of placed the eyes. This one's sort of underneath that line and this one's kind of even on it. And so anyway, that will all depend on the overall sketch you end up doing. But those guidelines hopefully can help you place eyes so they don't look super awkward. Here are your eyes. Hopefully yours look something similar, but of course they're not going to look exactly the same, and that's a-okay. And that said, if you enjoyed the tutorial, please like and subscribe. It really helps me in making more tutorials like this one. And check out other videos on the channel. I got more eye tutorials, more anime inspired tutorials, and other things to help you improve as an artist. So thank you so much. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day.